Hello, everyone, and hello, and welcome for this very first live session of the year. So this is about the Xen Orchestra 5.79 release, and there is a lot to cover today. Our team have been very productive during this month, so there is a lot to announce, and we have some big features coming. So I won't wait more, and Oliver, I let you present everything that's new in that's upcoming release.
Hello, Mark. Hello, everyone. And indeed, as you said, there's many things to cover for this first release of the year, and I think it's a good demonstration on how we want to move this year very fast and bringing a lot of things. And we'll start already by obviously the biggest part of this release, which is all about migrating from VMware. And for that, we'll talk about our migration tool called V2V, virtual to virtual or VMware to VATs, the whole stack with XCP-ng and Xen Orchestra. We had a pre-release of it in last December, but we made a lot of improvement on it. In fact, Florent did. The great thing with this solution about migrating it doesn't need any agent to install on your VM or inside your host or anything. And also, it's purely streaming, meaning that there is no data to store anywhere that could be really taking a lot of space. So for that, it's really convenient. And so to discover how it works, so basically we call that warm migration. And why we are calling that warm migration, it's for a good reason. It means that the VM itself won't be stopped for a long time. So let me show you exactly the process so you can understand why we call that warm. So if you see the graph that we made, so first you have on the left side your ESXi hosts, and on the other side you have your XCP-ng host, and in the middle you have Xen Orchestra using the virtual to virtual tool. So the VM for now is running on ESXi hosts, and you don't want any interruption on this because obviously this is production and you want to minimize the downtime. So since it's not possible to live migrate a VM from VMware to XCP-ng, it's still possible to reduce that downtime to a minimal time frame. So your, let's say, service availability running inside your VM won't be stopped. So the first thing the tool is doing when you decide to start it is to create a snapshot. So we'll snapshot the VMware on the ESXi hosts, and this snapshot will be replicated on the other side. So we do two things. So we create a VM on the XCP-ng side with the exact same name, number of networks, number of disks, and so on. And then we create all the disks and we send the contents of the snapshots to the VM disk on XCP-ng side, on the storage on XCP-ng side. So it's done by streaming again, so it's not stored anywhere else. It's directly coming into the disk. And doing this step, which is rather long, depending obviously on the size of the VM, it will transfer everything while the VM is still running. So your user still using your whatever web app, database, and so on won't see any difference during this full transfer. That could, be hours or things like that. But it doesn't matter. Again, the VM is up on the ESXi side. Then the next step, that's step number 3, is where we will halt the VM on ES60 side. So indeed, there you will lose access to the service inside the VM. We'll do another snapshot, which is instant, And then we will export only the diff, the blocks written since the first snapshot. And that's only that diff that will be sent, applied, if you like, on top of the destination VM disk on the XCP-ng side. So it's like patching the disks on destination on the blocks that has been written since the two snapshots. So it's very fast. That's where and when the VM won't be reachable, but it's a matter of minutes and at worst, dozens of minutes and so on, depending on the quantity that has been written, obviously, on your VM, but it's relatively fast. And as soon this is done, then we boot the VM on destination on the XCP-ng side. And that's why we call that warm on the last step, because in the end, the shutdown time was reduced a lot by just when we had to send the diff. So that's why it's very powerful, and it could be done right now through CLI, the XO CLI. So uh, I will give some example in the blog post that will be out very soon. But what matters to know is it's pretty straightforward in terms of parameters, and we also made some choices to be, let's say, conservative regarding the default. Because we know that you might want to use this to make some tests, and so by default, the stop source argument in the CLI is false, meaning that we won't stop the VM on the VMware side to be sure, you won't make this by accident or anything. So if you want to create a true warm migration, you need to provide the stop source to true. There's your other parameters called thin, which is sending only the use blocks to with a one downside, meaning that we spend more time to read the disks. In fact, we read it twice to be sure to only send the use block, but it's very efficient then on destination because only the use blocks will be written on XCP-ng side. So we advise to always use thin true because even if the transfer makes a bit more time while the VM is running, so it's not a big deal, in the end you end with a smaller VM on destination. Obviously, if you don't want to make a warm migration, you could do you start the migration itself in why the VM is halted. So it's a cold migration. So that's the next paragraph. And the cold migration means, as I said, it's only done while the VM is halted all the time. So it's, I would say, less flexible than using the warm one, but it's compatible with all the ESXi version. Because the warm migration for now just works up to VMware 6.4, if I remember correctly, because of the way the 6.3, sorry, because of the way the diff is made. But we hope that we manage to get it working on all ESXi version for the next release. So you would be able to do one migration regardless your VMware version in February or at worst in March. Also, in parameter, you have to go to pass to the command to make the migration. You must enter the VM ID. And if you don't know where this ID is, it's when you are using vCenter in the URL of the VM when you browse the VM. That's the last digits. So as you can see in the screenshot, there's /host/VM/4. So that's the ID 4 that will fetch this very virtual machine. Also, as a quick reminder, don't forget to remove the VMware guest tools before starting the migration because those tools obviously won't work and might cause issues on destination while running on top of Xen and XCP-ng. So regarding this about the what's next. So all in all, what we'd like to do for next release is, as I said, improve it for all, to get one migration working for all ESXi versions, but also put all of this in a wizard directly inside the web UI. So that might be even easier. You don't even have to think about the ID of your VM and so on. That would be directly handled by the UI. So stay tuned. We hope to get something maybe for the next release or the next one. So that would be even easier to make the migration directly from the Xen Orchestra UI. So that's it for the VMware migration thing. Now we'll talk a bit about the REST API. So as you might remember, we have two API to manage Xen Orchestra remotely. You got the historical one, I would say, the JSON RPC over WebSocket, which is what we use between the web UI and the server part of Xen Orchestra called XO Server. And we also created the REST API as a bonus, if you like, because the JSON RPC is great when you want something very, I would say, answering all the events happening in your web browser and so on. But if you just want to get some information, make some actions, then the REST API is a lot easier to use. And in that way, we started to create a REST API that is just fetching some objects, but now we started to improve both the way you can fetch the objects, but also the features on top of this API. So the first one we added is resident VMs, which allows you directly to use it to the filter in the REST API when you make a call. For example, in the curl example you can see on the blog post, this example is will return all the hosts with having no VM running on it. So resident VMs length 0 means there is no VM running on it. But you can also use this filter directly in the web UI of Xen Orchestra. For example, if you use a resident VM length inferior or equal to 2, then it will list all the hosts with 2 VM stops that are running on it or less. So this is really convenient. It can be used even outside the REST API itself. So back to the API, you can also export disk in RAW format. It was possible already to export them in a VHD format previously, but maybe for some reason you want to export the raw blocks, so you can, I don't know, convert that in whatever format you want to use. And so it's now possible, and it's very simple. It just, end the disk UID with a .raw, and that will do all the work for you. And in the example with the curl, you can even I would say send the results of this into your raw file, and again, then you can do whatever you want with this file. So it's very flexible and convenient for anything you might want to make with the disk itself. Another new thing in this REST API, we allowed for the first time a way to modify an existing object using the HTTP patch requests. And for now, it works on all objects, but only on their name label and name description property. But it's pretty simple to use, and you could, with a simple curl command or an HTTP command, change the name label or name description of your disk VM or whatever. So it would be a lot easier for automation on your side to do whatever you want with this REST API because it's very trivial to make that change. And finally, for the REST API stuff, you can now even delete some objects. So use it with caution, obviously, because this is destructive, because the delete request is very explicit. So you could remove VM or a disk for now, and probably more stuff later, like networks or PIFs or things like this. But anyway, it's also very simple to do that, and meaning that you could do some cleaning if you want in a fully automated fashion through the REST API. On another topic, a quick thing regarding Kubernetes. We managed to get it working back using Flannel during the last release. Now we, let's say, started to even add more capabilities to it. And for this release, it's all about using static IPs for your nodes, which is convenient if you want to test it quickly without having any DHCP server. So this is meant obviously for tests because this is static IPs and not meant to truly scale, but this is really handy if you want to deploy a test cluster from directly Xen Orchestra recipes. It works out of the box already. So let's move to Lite, which is a pretty great release this month. So as a reminder, Lite is meant to be a small pre-installed web UI directly inside XCP-ng that is bundled and will be bundled by default on the next XCP-ng release 8.3, which is already available in alpha. And so we started to make more stuff, like, for example, adding VM actions. So you can now start, stop, pause, suspend, resume, reboot, force reboot, force shutdown, any of your VM. So this is finally a way that if you do not have any other tool available for you right now, except having access to the host, before you only had to you must relied on XE CLI. Now you have the web UI to do this kind of basic operation. So now it's fully available. If you refresh your existing Lite, if you wonder how to use that, there is a dedicated thread on the forum to give some feedback on it. I will probably add it to the blog posts when it will be out officially. So if you want to report anything or give your impression on it, that will be appreciated. On the rest of Exolite, we added more, I would say, tiles in the dashboard of Pool, and now the let's say responsive design is working pretty well, depending on the size of the screen. Even if you're on a mobile and so on, that will put the right number of rows when you browse to this part, and it works pretty well. So we are moving in the right direction. We are getting closer and closer to the first mockups we have. So we hope to get to that result pretty soon. And as I said, in general, it takes a lot of time to create the components initially, but then it's going faster and faster for the, I would say, the end user, at least the impression that we're releasing features faster and faster because we made things that are, behind the scene. It takes a lot of time to make. And the last part will be on the thing we improved on the existing web UI. So we made, let's say, various improvements due to what people are asking, and helping directly people requiring some, I don't know, specific actions that are not exposed into the UI. So we did that. So it's very different things, but in very short, I won't give all the details, but we exposed the fact that you can enable Veridian capabilities or not to a VM, which could be useful in some cases. As you may be aware, we made some performance improvement on the backup speed, relying on NBD, but that's needed to enable NBD with XCCLI. So we changed that and exposed the fact that when you create a network or when you edit it, you could enable NBD. So you could rely on it for a dedicated network. So it's very handy. It's simple to make through the web UI, and no more need to use XCCLI to make that. After that, it's a minor improvement, but this is something that bothered me a lot about rounding the host memory. So in short, Xen Orchestra fetch the Xen API information about the host, about the total available memory. But as you may discovered, you never had the entire memory of your hosts displayed there. Always a number very close to the full amount, but always under it. There's some reasons to that. There's, I would say, complicated technical reasons that space is reserved by Xen on boot for using some memory, because Xen is a microkernel and a kind of operating system by itself. So it was not very clear about why I've had this amount of memory, and so we decided to simplify the visualization by just rounding it to the logical number. And so now you will find back the real, I would say, hardware installed memory you have. So that's more logical. So it's more hiding complexity for something that's not relevant in 99% of the case, to get something more smooth to read when you are using Xen Orchestra and XCP-ng. And finally, a small modification, but that could be important, is renaming the enable PV drivers through Windows updates, because we had some user confused about that. In short, when you enable this, it will rely on Windows Update to update the Citrix Spar virtualized tools. But if you install XCP-ng PV tools and then you enable this, that will cause a nightmare, because obviously it will conflict between the XCP-ng tools and the Citrix tools. And so that's why we renamed that to be more clear. And in a future release, it will be even with a modal window to confirm that you want to enable them. If you are sure to do it, because if you have XCP-ng driver, you should not enable this toggle. So that's a way to make it more clear for user, and just the first step, and you will have even more stuff coming for the next release. And that's it for the recap. It was pretty long because so many things to explain and to talk about it. However, I think again that's a good demonstration on the commitment we have to continue to bring innovation, new features, and improvement on the existing stuff. And stay tuned, because we also have a great announcement to make for this first quarter. So if you are not yet following, register for our newsletter on our website. Please go ahead, because that's where we are sending all the news, or subscribe to the channel to be sure that you won't miss any new release video like we do today. So that's it for me, and now I'll let Mark doing the closing thoughts.
Yeah, thank you, Oliver. Indeed, that was a pretty massive release to cover. So that was long enough, I guess. But only a quick recall: this weekend is also the very famous FOSDEM event, and this year we don't have a booth at this event, but a decent amount of our team will be there. We even have some talks about XCP-ng mainly. But if you are around, it's always the time to catch up some of our people. So this is this weekend. So we will probably do a quick blog post at the end of the FOSDEM event with our thoughts about the event this year. And as usual, see you next release. Thank you, everyone.
Bye bye.
And bye.